when we were looking at the last few Mishnayot in the 4th chapter of Beytzah, we talked about the fact that these Mishnayot are loosely connected with one another by questions of food. The issue with Yom Tov is basically food, because Yom Tov is like Shabbat in almost every other respect, but is different from Shabbat in the sense that we can prepare food, at least preparing what is required to be done on Yom Tov, not preparing stuff that we might have been able to do before Yom Tov. And we said that while there is this loose connection of food, the Mishnayot are kind of chained together by loose associations, just like we mentioned the very common in Tehillim. So you'll see it, for example, in Ashrei, that the idea at the end of a verse is connected to the one at the beginning of the next verse, and so on. So in other words, there's a chain of ideas running through the Tehillah, and then just as we have a chain of ideas running through the Mishnah. And we see a beautiful example, actually, as we move from the 3rd to the 4th Mishnah in the 4th chapter here. So we closed on the 3rd Mishnah with Rabbi Meir, who's saying, Af pochet lechatchila v'notel. If there's a sealed building that's where a brick has come out, something has come out of the wall of this sealed building, Rabbi Meir says, look, you can basically hollow out or take out a brick and then take food out of the sealed building. And the word uses pochet, he can hollow out from this building. And the Mishnah is then going to pick up the 4th Mishnah of the chap of Beytzah, is now going to pick up with this word pochet. Ein pochetin et haner. We don't hollow out a lamp. So we're moving, we're still in the context of food, right? But we all kind of in the context of food. We're moving from food to light, actually. But we're moving from hollowing out a building to hollowing out a lump of clay in which we might make a lamp. And look, I just brought you, I think we've looked at pictures of Roman lamps before, but this is an incredibly simple one. This is one that you could hollow out with your hand, actually. It's in the British Museum. It's Phoenician, so it's from very close to Eretz Yisrael. Apparently it was found in Malta, and it was made in the kind of 6th, 7th century before the Common Era. So it's more First Temple than Second Temple period, but you get the idea. It's just a really, really simple lump of clay. And you can see in it that there's a sort of hollow at the bottom that can hold some oil. And there are a couple of ridges at the side where you could hang a couple of wicks. This is a lamp which could be used to hang 2 wicks. And we'll see in a minute the issue of 2 separate wicks. But the Mishnah is going to be saying, look, to start off with, ein pochetinatan, just as we don't hollow out the building to take food, or Rabbi Meir says we do, ein pochetinatan ner mipnei shehu osekli. We don't hollow out this lump of clay to make a lamp because we're making a vessel. And clearly, we can prepare food on Yom Tov, but we only prepare what we have to prepare for the day. We don't actually make a vessel on Yom Tov. It's like the Mishnah on carrying out a Brit Milah, circumcision on Shabbat. Rabbi Eliezer says you can make a fire and make a knife to carry out the Brit Milah on Shabbat. But the rabbis don't agree with him. They say, look, we only do on Shabbat what is necessary, and we only do on Yom Tov what is necessary. And so along the same lines, Ve'ein osin pech Ein osim pechamin b'Yom Tov. We're not going to make charcoal on Yom Tov because making charcoal is basically preparatory to some other smelting task. It's the kind of thing you do if you were getting ready to be a goldsmith. Ve'ein chotchen et haptila lishnaim, and we wouldn't cut a wick into 2. So this is a 2-wick lamp we've got here, but we wouldn't cut a wick into 2 because you're essentially making 2 lamps. If you cut a wick into 2 using scissors, or the Rambam says, okay, using scissors or using a knife. But there's always a but. And actually, Rabbi Yehuda has the last word, and the halacha goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, chotchin ba'ur lishnei nerot. You could cut the wick into 2 lamps with fire. What's he talking about? Well, why are we going to cut with fire? And the Gemara actually explains, I didn't bring the Gemara, but I thought the picture is good enough. What if we took one wick and we dipped the 2 ends into the 2 little wicky things that you can see on the source sheet? If you've got the source sheet visible, there are 2 outlets from this lamp where we can dip in a wick. What if we took one wick and we dipped both ends in, one at each outlet? So we've actually almost built a circular wick coming in and out of this lamp. And then if we lit the middle of the wick, if we lit the wick in the middle, then we would naturally create 2 wicks, each one coming out of its own part of the lamp. Or we could, by the way, do the same trick with 2 lamps. If we had 2 of these lamps, we could make the wick lead from one lamp to the other lamp and then light it up in the middle. And then the fire would burn through the wick in the middle and we'd be left with 2 burning lamps. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is talking about, and the halacha goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. Let's go on, because the Mishnah then goes on with a whole, it's like a chain. Now we have a chain of things we don't do. This Mishnah is almost like poetry. I'm going to read it in Hebrew just because you can feel the poetry. These all start with Ein. Ein shovrim et hacheres, ve'ein chotchin et niya litzlot b'maliach, ve'ein gorfin tanur v'chiyain. Aval makabshin, ve'ein aval makabshin, ve'ein makifin shtei chaviot lishpoch aleihen et hakdera, ve'ein somchim et hakdera b'vakat, ve'chein b'dat, ve'ein manhigin et habehema v'makel b'yom tov. So there's a whole list. There's a shopping list of stuff that we don't do, and it's again loosely associated with food, but not completely associated with food. Some of this is associated with muktzah, with stuff which is not prepared. And we've said before that there are actually 2 themes in the tractate of Beytzah. One is food and the other is muktzah, stuff that's not prepared. Very important on Yom Tov. So what does this mean? Ein shovrim tacheres. We don't break up a potsherd. So we've just been in the space of creating a new pot. Okay, we're not going to create a new pot, and we're not going to create a new pot by pressing out clay, and we're not going to create a new pot by breaking up a pot, or by breaking paper, or by cutting paper. We're not going to break paper. To roast a salty fish. Apparently they used to put a potsherd or a piece of paper on top of the fish on the griddle so that it wouldn't burn too much. A bit like we use tinfoil today, actually, same purpose. This tinfoil is the analogy, actually. Yes, this is all about cutting tinfoil. This is really about cutting tinfoil before Yom Tov. The Mishnah is saying, look, we don't cut up paper to make a cover to cook something with, just as we wouldn't break a potsherd to make a cover to cook something with. We wouldn't rake out an oven or a range, although, by the way, the Rambam says, look, if you have to do it to cook, you can do it, but we can kind of arrange it. We can press down on the ashes, and maybe that will make it suitable for cooking without having to actually raking out. We're not going to place 2 jars side by side to balance a pot on top of them. So we could make a kind of a new stove. If we had a fire between the 2 pots, we could put these 2 pots side by side and put a 3rd pot on top of it. And then essentially we'd have a stove. And the Bartanura points out, it's such a beautiful comment on from the Bartanura, actually. He says, look, makrivin zol etzel, we don't put these two pots together. Kamo ein makifin b'riyah. We don't kind of sort of, we don't create a new creation. So we don't make a new kind of stove out of two pots on Yom Tov. We you know, it's like the egg which is born on Yom Tov. We don't touch it. We wouldn't balance a pot on a wooden wedge. We wouldn't actually do this, balance a door on a wooden wedge, because there's an idea that the wood is for burning. So there's a question of what is mukhan, what is prepared. The wood is considered to be prepared for burning, but it's not considered to be prepared for fixing things, unless we've already designated it for fixing things before Yom Tov. So you wouldn't just pick up a piece of wood and use it to balance a pot or balance a door. And we wouldn't drive cattle with staff on a festival, because that makes us look like a cattle driver. So we've said we can send presents of food to our friends, and we've said we can even send a live animal to our friends on Yom Tov, but we're not going to drive it with a staff, because that makes us look like a professional cattle driver. And we've said many times in this tractate, we don't do things on Yom Tov that make us look like professionals. We behave like friends, but we don't behave like professionals. And the printed version, actually, of this Mishnah has Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon disagreeing, but that is not in Kaufman, and I haven't brought it because it's not in Kaufman. But there is Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon is in the Babylonian Talmud, but not in the Jerusalem Talmud. We do, however, have Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Notel Adam Kesam Mish lefanav lachtzov bo shinav. Rabbi Eliezer says you can take a chip. This is a chip of wood from Mish lefanav, from what is in front. Basically, what is in the house, what you've got around you, to make a toothpick. Really interesting. We're making a toothpick on Yom Tov, but effectively we're making a new toothpick, because we're taking a chip of wood that wasn't previously designated as toothpick wood to pick our teeth with. That's Rabbi Eliezer. Remember, by the way, Rabbi Eliezer is the one who says you can basically smelt a knife on Shabbat to carry out a Brit Milah on the 8th day. And the halacha doesn't go according to Rabbi Eliezer, and it won't actually go according to him here. He goes on to say, Umagabev minachatzeru madlik, and he can actually collect wood from the whole courtyard and light it up, because anything in the courtyard is considered to be ready. Shekol mashe bechatzer muchanhu. There's no issue with muktzeh, anything in the courtyard. And the sages will disagree. V'chachamim omrim megabev mi she lefanav umadlik. He can take wood which is essentially in his house or right in front of his house, and he can light up with it. But he can't, because wood is for lighting. If wood is in your house, it's assumed it's for lighting, but it's not for anything else. Umadlik, he may light it up, but he can't do anything else with it. The halacha does not go according to Rabbi Eliezer.